What is going on, investors? Back again. Time to take a look at another stock that just reported earnings today, and that is Adobe, ticker symbol ADBE. Want to apologize for not having a few videos the last few days. My son had a fever, and while that's not necessarily that big of a deal, obviously in the times we're in today does cause some nervous times, but all is well today, and I hope all of you are feeling well out there as well. So into Adobe, they just reported earnings after the bell today. They look really good. The stock is trading up in the after hours, about 2% or about $12 per share. We'll jump into the financials, and then finally we'll jump into the stock chart as well. Full disclosure, I was able to pick up a couple shares of Adobe back in this range, 2 shares. I'm looking for a 10-share position, so I kind of inched into it, and so we'll see how that goes, but I just want to give that full disclosure. Now, Adobe just reported earnings, like I just said. We've got 3 months ended here. They report late. You know, most companies are already reported earnings. They've come in at here right in the end of August. We've got a 9-month view here as well, so they're just about to start their 4th quarter. We see their subscription revenue is the bulk of the business, their Creative Cloud and other offerings that they offer to enterprises and things like that. That ticked up nicely, about $500 million. So our total revenue went up about $400 million or so. We went from $2.8 billion up to $3.2. For the 9-month ended, it looks like we're right in that $3 billion run rate really consistently for the 9 months, because we ended the 9-month at about $9.4 billion. That is compares very favorable to the previous period where we did 8.1. Now, this is a really high margin business. This is why I started inching into this stock. Reminds me a lot of Microsoft and some other software companies, but this one's really mature. It's got some really market leading products as well, which is I really like. So we spent $328 to make $3 billion. Yeah, can you believe that? That's absolutely, I mean, even if this was as written, we spent $328 to make 3,000, you would do that all day and every day. They happen to spend $328 million to make $3 billion. That's phenomenal. And you can see it's not much up from the previous period where we grew 500 million up here. We only grew it by about 24 million down here. So the margins are holding true. Obviously, this is a pretty, well-aged company as well. It holds true for the 9-month ended as well. Everything's looking absolutely phenomenal. Now, the other thing you want to keep in mind is operating expenses. How well are these scaling up? And with Adobe, they're scaling up really nicely. Obviously, we see tick ups pretty much across the board here, but it's well within line, and it is in line with, you're growing these revenues by about 400 million in the period. And we grew them about almost $1 billion here, a little over $1 billion for the 9-month ended here. And so we're seeing, yes, our expenses have ticked up a little bit, but not nearly as quickly outpacing our other costs and more importantly, the revenue. So that is all flowing to the bottom line, or our operating income here. We made $854 million in the previous period, ticked up over $1 billion in the most recent quarter. We see for the 9-month, we're trending at about $1 billion run rate for Adobe, and that's really strong. That's $3 billion. So if you want to give them credit for $4 billion, we've got a valuation at $233 billion. This is not a cheap stock, okay? So we've got a 49 PE on this. This is not a cheap stock whatsoever from a price to earnings ratio, but this is a company that is continuing to grow. I'll talk more about the chart here in a minute. Maybe there's some positive things. Maybe they can grow into their valuation here in the next 3 to 6 months. Now, the other thing is they executed a buyback. Notice we went from 491 down to 485, and for the 9-month, we went from 492 down to 486. So we are executing a buyback that should support the shares as well. Obviously helps EPS, which I figure I don't typically pay attention to. Now, from the balance sheet side, everything looks sunshines and roses here. We have 3.7 and about 1.5 in short-term investments. That's blended at almost $5.5 billion. That's actually up quite a bit from, we've got a November view of last year. That might be, they've got to give us a 9-month view here, I guess. Now, Total debt. What was interesting is they had 3.1 billion in debt, short-term debt in the previous. I think what they did is they rolled that over into long-term debt. Notice we only had 989 million in long-term debt. So here's long-term liabilities right here. Now we're up to 4.1. But I think what they did is they basically just took this because now short-term debt is gone, but our long-term debt ticked up by a little bit, almost this exact amount here. I think they just rolled that over, almost like a refinance of a mortgage or something like that. So our total liabilities almost identical. Our total assets up a little bit. Everything looking very, very clean from that perspective. So obviously from a balance sheet perspective, it looks clean. From a cash flows, we're looking clean too. They give you a year-over-year view here on the cash flows for 3 months ended. We went from 923 up to $1.4 billion. It's not too far from their net income number. So you see their net income number here was 955. We're adding back in some stock-based compensation, some depreciation. These other numbers are really minor. So, you know, if you want to factor this in, you know, you can. From a cash flow perspective, it looks good, but this net income number is really, really close. And so you can kind of compare this company from there. And look, that's the financials. This is a really clean company, easy company to understand. That's why I jumped in and bought some shares. Now, I think what's possible with the market in general and Adobe stock as well, we see we're trading up over here. What I've done is marked out some channels. I think what's possible over the next, maybe even into the end of the year, this stock could retest their highs. All the stocks, most of the stocks out there could retest highs, especially the high flyers. But I think what's more possible is these stocks start channeling a little bit. I actually think that would be really healthy for stocks that, like Adobe, that have a pretty extended valuation to channel out. I think we could channel out in this top range, we could channel out in this bottom range, or we can kind of channel out in these 3 bars. I think anywhere you're buying shares at this lower channel, the 470, I think I was like 475-ish when I bought shares of this. And obviously even lower, we'd have to have a little bit broader market sell-off. Anywhere in that 430 range, I think would be attractive with Adobe. If you want to come all the way down, if there's like a dire scenario, I think down to 385. And then obviously if we retest these lows down here that we saw in March, which look, some people are predicting, some people say it's possible. I wouldn't put anything off the table. We can come back down here to 300. That obviously would be where you kind of back up the truck with Adobe and probably other stocks if they were to happen to fall. But I think the most likely scenario with Adobe is we probably come close to retesting some highs up here in this 520-ish range. And then I think the stock's going to have trouble poking back up through this. But what might be good is it comes back down and we kind of channel somewhere in these 3-bar range between 4, call it 25 and up to 530-ish. So I think you've got an opportunity. Obviously, the closer to the bottom of these ranges where you want to acquire the stock, I think would be a good buy in my opinion. These financials are rock solid and they're continuing. We're in a little bit of a tough environment, maybe not for their Photoshop products or kind of the work from home products, but they have a lot of enterprise products as well that probably will do good in a comeback as well. So that's Adobe. Keep this video short and sweet. Like this stock. I think you should add it to your watch list. Keep an eye on it. So there we go. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. We'll be back with more videos. Good luck with your investments.